Hey secreters! So I promised you a video about the keys, so I'm going to talk to you about the keys. The keys in the January English painting. So sometimes I wonder how often people really pay attention to all the little pieces that are painted in the paintings. I know that sometimes John Palancar has mentioned that some things have meaning and some things do not. And it's up to us to kind of figure that out, right? But what really struck me about the keys the other night when I was doing my studies is just exactly how different each key was, where they were hanging on the rings, and their design. And so I wanted to look at it a little bit further, because I know some people have also said, hey Karen, you know, I see another key in the painting. There's this key, there's one here, there's one there. But I'm only working with the ones that we can visually see in the moment. Like what is right there that's pronounced. And it lends me to think about how keys play a part in medieval English history. And more specifically, the use of keys on crests. I know that in my book of heraldry, it links two keys specifically back to the Duke of York, or the House of York. And what's really interesting about that, if we think about Toronto, is Toronto used to be named York. So when the information came out from Sean Kelly's friend, Brian, I found it very interesting that the whole element of the keys of York could potentially be playing a part in this painting. Furthermore, also mentioned in the heraldry book is a Dutch element. So there are some elements that could also imply that there is a Dutch connection in some way. But most specifically, two keys are kind of important to really think about in the context of the painting. Some people in religious preferences, it dates back to, you know, Peter in heaven received two keys. One key opens the gates to heaven and one opens the gates to hell. You have, and that's a religious element, but you also have two keys that symbolize a beginning and an end. You have the immigrant story that's tied to keys, two keys, whereas, you know, a key to the new country that they're seeking their freedoms and their prosperity in, and the keys to the old. So when we think about why the two keys were painted there, they could have all of these elements. We also can look at their design, because when you think back to the history of keys, some of the original keys that were very first made were created in Egypt out of wood, and then the Romans came along and kind of reconfigured their keys also out of wood. And what they found was the wood's not going to be impenetrable. And it wasn't until the invention of the iron age that they started making different kinds of keys that worked in different ways with the teeth on the shaft. And these are things that we have to think about, because they might have meaning. It might have meaning. Was this key designed in a way that was indicative of a certain century? You know, when the ram's head keys had first started to be made, the skeleton key, right? The key that unlocks everything at that time. And keys have come a long way, and we're still using them today, right? So we have learned various ways of creating their effectiveness and their impenetrability. And so there's got to be some meaning to the keys that are there. And the question is how it ties in. You know, medieval England was one of the forerunners in creating this kind of skeleton key, if you will. And so it's very fitting that it's painted in the painting. And maybe it has a meaning for the key in the German painting too. I mean, I know people say, oh, it's a rebus, Milwaukee. Okay, well, that's cool. And I respect that because I like all different theories, but you know, maybe we need to look at these keys a little bit more and study their origin and figure out if their meaning ties into the painting some way. And the same when we think about the June painting in the same kind of context where you have all the different symbology that's painted in the gown. And that we're going to talk about in the next video. So until then, let's think about some keys, and hopefully you're enjoying your summer. And a shout out for happy Juneteenth today. Juneteenth is an important day, really important day. Can't imagine what it would have been like to have been a slave after the emancipation and still not knowing you were free 2 years ago. How many families could have still been affected by that in that time frame that it took them to get all the way down to Texas to tell them that they were free. It's a super important day. And I'm glad that we have learned of its importance, and I'm glad that we are celebrating it. I think it's important to recognize the sacrifices of those people and respect it. So this holiday is been a long time coming, and it's good that it's here. So enjoy your day, and until the next time, carry on, guys.